At 76, Bill Murray tells the truth about Rodney Dangerfield. I always assumed the biggest story behind Caddyshack would be some wild Hollywood feud. Then I stumbled across something Bill Murray said years later, and honestly, it surprised me. Because after all the chaos, the improvisation, and the legendary one-liners, the thing he remembered most wasn't about himself at all. It was about Rodney Dangerfield, and the quiet courage Murray watched up close that almost nobody noticed. Most people remember Caddyshack for exploding golf courses, dancing gophers, and jokes that somehow still make people laugh more than 45 years later. But if you ask me, the movie has always hidden another story beneath the comedy. Not one about golf. Not even one about Hollywood. It's a story about respect, which is funny because Rodney Dangerfield spent most of his career insisting he never got any. When Bill Murray reflected on those months in Florida decades later, he didn't talk about becoming a movie star. He talked about Rodney. That caught me off guard. Bill Murray wasn't supposed to become the face of Caddyshack. His character, Carl Spackler, barely existed in the original screenplay. Just a strange groundskeeper with a few scattered scenes. Instead, Murray walked onto the set and started inventing. Entire speeches, random stories. The famous Cinderella monologue? Improvised. The Dalai Lama story? Made up on the spot. Director Harold Ramis eventually stopped trying to control him. He simply let the cameras roll. Watching that today almost feels impossible. Studios would never allow that kind of freedom now. And honestly, that's part of the magic. But while Murray looked completely comfortable making things up, someone else on that set was experiencing something entirely different. Rodney Dangerfield. Here's what I never really appreciated until recently. By the time Caddyshack began filming, Rodney wasn't some young comedian chasing a dream. He was already nearly 60. He'd spent decades building one of the greatest stand-up careers America had ever seen. Yet this was essentially his first major movie. Imagine that. You've mastered one craft. The whole country knows your act. Then suddenly you're starting over from scratch. That has to be terrifying. People forget how difficult Rodney's journey really was. He wasn't born famous. He wasn't even born Rodney Dangerfield. He came into the world as Jacob Cohen in 1921. His father disappeared for most of his childhood. Money was always tight. As a teenager, he wrote jokes because, in his own words, making people laugh was one of the only things that made him feel seen. Then came years of failure. Club after club. Night after night. Eventually, he quit comedy altogether. Think about that. He actually walked away. He sold aluminum siding, raised a family, knocked on strangers' doors trying to make a living, while quietly wondering if comedy had left him forever. Most people never know that chapter. I certainly didn't. Then something incredible happened. In his mid-40s, an age when many entertainers are slowing down, Rodney decided to bet on himself one more time. That's where I Don't Get No Respect was born. It wasn't just a catchphrase. It was his life. And somehow millions of Americans recognized themselves in that joke. That's why it worked. Not because it was clever. Because it felt true. Fast forward to Florida in 1979. Rodney finally lands his first big movie. Only one problem. Nobody laughs. At least, not while the cameras are rolling. Stand-up comedians depend on hearing laughter. It's how they know where the rhythm is, where the pauses belong, where to push harder. Movie sets are silent. They have to be. Crew members can't ruin the sound. Rodney reportedly thought his jokes were failing. Someone finally explained that everyone wanted to laugh, they simply couldn't. I honestly can't imagine how unsettling that must have felt. Especially after spending decades earning every laugh the hard way. This is where Bill Murray enters the story in a way most fans never noticed. Murray wasn't mentoring Rodney. He wasn't trying to teach him acting. He simply created an environment where anything unexpected felt welcome. Improvisation became normal. Mistakes became opportunities. Instead of worrying whether every line matched the script, everyone started trusting instinct. Rodney relaxed. Then something clicked. The famous dinner scene. almost entirely improvised. One joke after another. It suddenly felt less like filming a movie and more like Rodney working a nightclub, except the audience wouldn't clap until months later. That's a strange kind of faith. I think that's what Murray eventually recognized. Years later, he admitted watching Rodney work changed him. Not because Rodney was funnier, not because he stole scenes, because he watched someone willingly become uncomfortable again. There's something deeply admirable about that. Most successful people spend their lives protecting what they've already mastered. Rodney walked directly into something unfamiliar. He risked looking awkward. He risked failing publicly. And he did it anyway. That takes nerve. Of course, Caddyshack itself became legendary. Almost by accident. The production was chaotic. A hurricane interrupted filming. The cast reportedly turned the downtime into one giant party. Even the explosive ending became so massive that someone reportedly mistook it for a real disaster. Nothing about that production felt orderly. Yet somehow, everything fit.